Quotation from myself, segment 7, quotation number 83. Vanity will always find something to feed on, and even if there is nothing, it will feed on itself. Number 84. The representatives of the British so-called upper middle class are easily recognizable by the self-justified pomposity of their speech and behavior. But what presents a really preposterous spectacle is an attempt by a member of the British working class, when in company of foreigners, to imitate, like Molière would-be gentlemen, such behavior, in hope that they wouldn't be able to tell the genuine article from a fake. Number 85. A religious thinker is a contradiction in terms, for whereas religion is a product of faith, thinking is a product of reason, and faith and reason are in direct contradictions to each other. Number 86. There is a permanent conflict between idealism of individual and materialism of the crowd. One is looking for self-expression. The many are preoccupied with everyday living. An idealist, if successful in his self-actualizing singular pursuit, became this rare phenomena, a hero, and as such is doomed to destruction sooner or later. But the crowd must and shall survive, so he can go on and continue to produce idealistic heroes who are the expression of the longing to rise above the trivial and mundane, to break the bonds of the flesh, and to soar into the realm of the spirit. It doesn't mean, of course, that the hero production is the main purpose of human existence, but it is unquestionably plays an important part in the psychological survival of the crowd. One only has to look at the recorded history to realize how much it resembles the who is who of the past 3,000 years. The crowd lives vicariously through its idealistic heroes. They are the one doing what we all would like but don't dare to do. At the same time, such a symbiotic relationship inevitably produces ambiguity, for we want our heroes both to succeed and to fail. Their success gives our hope. Their failure justifies our passivity and lack of resolve. And so we sacrifice them because of who they are, and we worship them for the same reason. Yet on rare occasion, the idealistic hero manages to inflict the cautious crowd with his idealism and heroism. Then it forgets for a moment its preoccupation with survival, and in joining him becomes a collective hero, ready to sacrifice itself. And this is called revolution. But it never lasts long. Sooner or later, the instinct of mass self-preservation prevails, and the crowd returns to its usual ways again. As the earth brings forth the flowers, so heroes spring up from the crowd. But heroes, like the flowers, are short-lived, while the earth and the crowd abide forever. Number 87. A conflict between Jesus and the Jews of the New Testament is a conflict between the idealism of individual, beholding the transcendent, and materialism of the crowd, preoccupied with the immediate. He wants to transform their souls They demand miracles to cure their bodies and to fill their stomachs. Even his disciples, at whom Jesus pointed and said, "Look, here are my mother and my brother," seems to be deaf to his message. The growing realization of his inability to change people brings the continuous disappointment and bitterness to him. Jesus begins to hate the materialistic nature of man. In a fit of desperation, he drives out of the temple all who were buying and selling there and overturns the tables of the money changers. Feeling defeated and rejected, Jesus is pushed half-willingly by the currents of events toward what seems to him more and more as the best and the only fitting conclusion of his mission: martyrdom. Overcome yet undeterred by knowing fear and doubts, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He all but stages his last miracle, his own death and resurrection. And the miracle did happen, as it had happened before and would happen after, again and again, throughout human history. An idealistic hero, either despised and persecuted or simply ignored while alive, becomes the subject of worship after his death. It happens because it isn't the man who is being resurrected by the idea, which freed from the embodiment of mortal flesh of an individual, gets embraced by the crowd and immortalized through it. Thus the conflict is resolved. The dead hero becomes a living God. Number 88. Blessed are those who are longing, for they know not what they are longing for. Number 89. Nowadays, as the mannequins are beginning to look more and more like real people, and real people more and more like the mannequins, one is faced with the dilemma whether to celebrate the improvement of the copy or to lament the deterioration of the original. Number 90. Some people spend all their lives looking for somebody to spend their life with. Number 91. We are all judged not only by the way we live, but also by the way we died. Sometimes the latter carries much more weight in forming an opinion about us than the former. Number 92. Oh, the disappointment of a prophet who, having predicted the end of the world at midnight, wakes up the next morning to find out it is still here. Number 93. This is the progress of knowledge, and it's both basic and fundamental. What we do not know yet, we always measure by what we already know, until this unknown becomes known to us, and in its turn is used to measure the next unknown, and so on and so forth. Thus, anything new has to be described in the terms of the old, which are modified in the process, assuming more or less new forms, and then, through the long usage, eventually become sufficiently old themselves to be used later in a similar manner. All knowledge, therefore, is interconnected in one all-encompassing the whole, and any division of it is more or less artificial. Number 94. The dialogue that does not contain the mutually accepted axiom, which in itself still allows different opinions on any particular subject, sooner or later becomes incomprehensible to both sides. Number 95. Not being afraid of being wrong is a necessary precondition for any open and meaningful conversation. Number 96. Beware of those who sound perfectly convincing, for they are usually the perfect liars. Number 97. One cannot have many friends while remaining true to oneself. Number 98. I am alone even in my dreams. But that which is bad, even if it's only a minor grievances, because of constant irritation seems to be getting worse, and like proverbial pea in a prince's bed, produces an amount of discomfort and pain all out of proportion to actual size. As a result, at any given moment in history, there are states and nations which are in the process of unification and others which are separating. The fact that at this or that particular point in time one group is bigger than the others is purely accidental and does not necessarily represent a trend unless proven otherwise, which in my humble opinion is impossible to do. The only certainty in that countries, like individuals, would usually choose, given the opportunity or situation, opposite to one they are already in. And though each group, unionists and separatists, claim that the change it is looking for is for the better, the end results in reality are far from obvious. Whether their respective aspirations are eventually fulfilled or not depends on many, mostly unpredictable circumstances, which, being in a state of perpetual flux, cause a continuation evolution of those aspirations. What remains constant through this process is the desire for change. It is so deeply ingrained in human character that quite often even the change, which is to all objective observer for the worse, is embraced just to avoid stagnation. Perhaps the ultimate expression of this tendency is a suicide, when somebody changes into nobody, the nothingness. And nations, though not as often or as conspicuously as individuals, are capable of committing suicide too. Number 100. The fact that, as they say, life goes on should not be viewed as a special reason for optimism, for it simply means that as the life goes on, it will contain as much happiness and as much misery as it always had, which could be a cause for being both optimistic and pessimistic at the same time, one no more than the other.